Hello and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Attlas Information Live. I'm your host, Attlas Alex, and as I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, today we are going to be taking a very practical approach. I mean, we always try to take a very practical approach, don't we? But today we're going to be taking a specifically practical approach to intuition, to the sometimes enigmatic, sometimes seemingly lost or forgotten ability, the still small voice or the still soft voice of the insights and those premonitions and those gut feelings that are oh so important to us on the path and in our lives. Because while on a surface level analysis, we can make some broad platitude-like statements about intuition, about receiving guidance from our higher self, from our true self, in a very direct sort of way. If you hearken back to the live stream we did together on information, and then you know that intuition is an aspect, a crucial, critical aspect of that which must come into formation through us. We are a catalyst, a vessel, a vehicle for the work of our innermost. Our innermost cannot be in 3D space without a 3D spacesuit, an Iron Man suit, by which our inner Tony Stark becomes the superhero. But there is a catch. It's not so simple as we receive an intuition and then we follow it through. And if you've observed yourself and observed your life, you know this. Implicitly, you know this. Because you've been in situations where you've followed your gut. You followed the guidance of the still small voice, and yet things did not turn out. The outcome was not what you had expected. Certainly not what you had wanted. And it's very often that we find ourselves asking the question, why was I sent on this wild goose chase? In other words, we need to address and explore and understand with clarity the problems associated with intuition. And we need to clarify specifically what we mean when we say the problems with intuition. Because there are problems with intuition. But the problems associated with intuition are like the problems with car ownership or the problems with driving. You might have a brand new car that functions and operates perfectly, exactly according to specifications. And you go and you pick up your brand new car, you take delivery of it, and you're driving home from the dealership, and you're on cloud nine. You're so pleased with your purchase. I mean, it's a huge purchase for most people, and it's an exciting time. It's a new chapter in your traveling life, having a brand new car. Even if it's a used car, it's new to you. And that car might be functioning like a Swiss watch. And still, you know from experience and from the countless experiences of others that at any moment, driving that perfectly functioning, delivered to you as advertised vehicle, the act of driving that vehicle, any number of catastrophes could befall you before you reach your destination. We call them accidents. And as you also know, especially in this modern era, it is quite uncommon that accidents are caused due to some mechanical failure, i.e., brake lines, failing, or some other mechanical mishap, some other defect, or what have you. It happens, don't get me wrong, it happens, particularly also with electric vehicles, because it's a newer technology and a lot of the kinks haven't quite been ironed out yet. So you have, batteries exploding and, things of that nature do happen. So don't get me wrong. But in the big picture, it is overwhelmingly true that automobile accidents are caused due to driver error. Drivers who are distracted, drivers who are impaired in some way. And even if it's not impaired due to substances, they can be impaired emotionally. They can be distant. They can be daydreaming. So that's really a form of distraction. But someone who doesn't have their mind on what they're doing, it means they're impaired. They're relying entirely on their, mechanical capacity to drive a vehicle just on rote conditioning, but they're not paying attention to their environment. They're dreaming, they're daydreaming. They're thinking about the past, the future. They're worried about this, they're worried about that, or whatever. And so they're not paying attention. So they're unable to react to changes in circumstances. You know, the guy who cuts them off, or the person who runs the stop sign or the red light, or who knows what. So that's an objective fact, right? Accidents do happen, and accidents happen for a variety of different reasons. And sometimes accidents are just accidents, right? And there's no point in trying to lay blame. That's right. We're not playing the blame game here. The purpose for using this analogy is to put into context that the act of driving safely and getting from A to B is not without its problems. And those problems very rarely have anything to do with the vehicle. But rather the driver and or other drivers who are involved, that may be involved in whatever accident, whatever incident takes place. So when we say there are problems with intuition, we have to understand that within the context of the problems with driving. That an intuitive message can arrive in perfect form, perfectly formed, and clear as day, clear as a bell. And yet, we must take that message, that information, and we must still act on it. We must still put it into formation in the world. We must apply that information somehow. And it's in the application or the acting upon the intuition where a lot of the problems arise. Because in a very real sense, we are drivers. And intuition is a vehicle of sorts to get us from where we are in this moment to where we need to be in some moment in the future. And the guidance that we receive, much like the guidance of a GPS system in a car, very often we receive guidance like turn left, turn right, do this, do that. And much like the GPS in a car, as you're going through life moment by moment, it's not like you're looking at the whole map and the whole journey and every turn and every stop and every change of direction, right? It's step by step. And the GPS announces to you the direction in which to go, in which to turn, as you approach the various intersections, the various interchanges, right? So the information is on a need to know basis, and we receive that information at the moment that we need to know it in order to take action. But just like the automobile itself, which could be functioning perfectly in perfect working order, that GPS can be functioning perfectly and in perfect working order, telling us to take this off ramp or to turn right at the next intersection, or to make a left at the next intersection. And the information we receive is correct. We need to make a left at this intersection. But how we make that left-hand turn, do we make it consciously? Do we make it safely? Do we make it aware? Or do we try to make the yellow light, like make the, before the green turns yellow or the green turns red? So we accelerate into the intersection. We're trying to catch the light and make that left turn. So now we're going too fast into a left-hand turn, which is the most dangerous type of turn. And maybe someone in the other direction is also trying to catch the green light before it turns red. So they're also accelerating into the intersection. So the GPS can be functioning perfectly, but that is no guarantee. And even if we follow the directions of the GPS, there's no guarantee that we are going to make it through that intersection, let alone to our destination. Because so much depends upon how we apply the knowledge that we receive. And the still soft voice operates a lot like a GPS. So, because a GPS and an automobile are manly, worldly creations, we know that they can also malfunction. And yet, the majority of incidents and accidents that take place are due to driver error. And it is much more common that we're trying to follow the GPS and we misunderstand or misinterpret what it's saying. Like if we come to a traffic circle, which a lot of North Americans, for whatever reason, seem to have a problem with traffic circles. They're very common in Europe and they're very straightforward, but if it's a large traffic circle with multi-lanes and multi-exits and entrances and so on, it can be a little daunting and confusing, especially if there's lots of traffic and you're in the middle of rush hour, or you're like in downtown Paris with the way the Parisians drive, where everybody sort of thinks they're a rally driver. And you're just in a little rental car or whatever trying to make your way through the city, and you're trying to follow the GPS, and you're in this massive traffic circle, and it's 3 lanes deep, and you're trying to get to your exit and so on. It can be very daunting. But the GPS is telling you the right way to go. It's telling you where you need to go. But the how to get there, and whether you are able to make the maneuver in traffic with a lot of chaos and a lot of distraction and a lot of, the hurly-burly, Shakespeare would call it, right? The crazy, chaotic busyness of being in traffic in rush hour in a big city where everybody's in a hurry to get to wherever they're going. Are we able to perform the maneuver with calm, with serenity, with clarity, in peace? Or are we going to be agitated and worried and anxious because, oh my God, I can't make it to the exit on time? It's like that scene from a National Lampoon's European Vacation, where the Oswalds get caught in that Paris traffic circle, and they just keep going around and around and around and around because the Parisians won't let him change lanes to get to the outer lane so he can make his exit. So receiving directions from the still soft voice, it's only the first step. And even if you have it with clarity, with exactitude, with certainty, because that too is not guaranteed. Because we need a great deal of discernment to know for sure. And we have to have quite a bit of experience following our intuition and knowing the difference between a true gut feeling, a true, genuine guidance from the still small voice versus the whim of some ego. Because that's not always clear. And we'll get to that. We'll get to the ego in just a little bit. But just on a purely mechanical, practical level, we have to accept that we, as mortal vessels and servants charged with a task of fulfilling, of acting out, of acting upon divine guidance, that divine guidance is quite possibly perfect. But we are not. And the intuition might be flawless, and we might receive that intuition flawlessly. But we, the ones who must fulfill that intuition, we are not flawless. But we forget that. We deny that. Or perhaps better put, we are prevented from knowing that. That truth is not ranked among the list of my truths, right? Because mystic pride won't allow it. Mystic pride wants us to believe that we have access to intuition, we have access to our higher self, and therefore, there's the message, and I'm acting it out. I'm doing what I'm told. And then when things don't go our way, what's the first thing we do? Be honest. Especially if we've been through it a lot. We've been following our intuition, or trying to, our whole life. And time again, we seem to be led astray. We seem to be led down what appears to be going into a dead end, as if we were using Google navigation. You know how many times Google has sent me into a dead end? Google Maps in the car once told me on my way somewhere out, and this was taking me out in the country, and it wanted me to make a left right into the middle of a cornfield. And because we have been conditioned from our experience of following the orders and directions of others, whether it be our GPS or other people, and when you're trying to find a house party to a person's place that you've never been before, and you're trying to follow the directions that they gave you in email or over the phone or right? Oh yeah, turn left where the old schoolhouse used to be. And you're like, okay, there's clearly issues with the directions I've been given. And then the same thing when you've, I don't know, been trying to put together a piece of IKEA furniture and you're trying to follow their doodles, right? because of course IKEA sells stuff all over the world. So their answer to their instructions on how to put stuff together is no language, just images. Well, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Great. Okay. So, unless you have a PhD in symbology, trying to put together a piece of IKEA furniture, again, you can become very frustrated at the sort of wantonness or the lack in the instructions themselves, the directions. The same thing can be said if you've been trying to follow somebody's recipe, or you're trying to troubleshoot something on the computer, or you're trying to do any kind of DIY project around the house, and you looked up a guide on the internet or maybe a YouTube video, and you're trying to follow along and follow directions, right? And then it's not working out. And of course, what's the first thing that pops into your mind, right? You're looking at a whole bunch of, pieces like strewn out over the floor, and you're looking at, you're looking at, it's like that Homer Simpson episode where he's trying to put something together from IKEA, right? And he looks at the picture he's like, oh wow, that's perfect. Then he puts down the instructions and he goes, well, why the hell doesn't mine look like that, right? So the natural tendency for the one who is following directions, when the directions don't result in the expected outcome, we tend to want to blame the directions. That's just an automatic reaction. Oh, I've been misled. I have been misled. This is an ongoing joke in movies and television and stories where individuals on road trips together, and somebody is playing the role of navigator and the other one is driving. And so they end up somewhere where they shouldn't be, or they end up completely lost. And the driver says, well, now, and the person she goes, oh, you took the wrong turn back there. And he goes, well, now you took it with me. This is from Driving Miss Daisy, Morgan Freeman and Jessica Tandy, which is a Pulitzer Prize winning stage play that the Academy Award winning film was based on. And they get lost, and she says, oh, this is why we're lost. You took the wrong turn back in Albuquerque. And Morgan Freeman says, well, now you took it with me, Miss Daisy, and you got the map. So this is a running gag, including the Albuquerque gag, which is from Looney Tunes. So the archetypal truth that is a universal truth for humanity is, this is a universal experience. We have all been misled. We have all been given bad directions, and or we have all followed directions badly. That's the God honest truth. And so when when Bugs Bunny pops his head out of the snow and he says, this isn't New Orleans, this isn't Mardi Gras. And then he pulls out a map and he goes, yeah, okay, I should have taken that left at Albuquerque. Right? It's a gag. It's an ongoing gag, but it's the acceptance that the map is not wrong, right? Back in the days when people used maps, right? I'm old enough to remember, and many of you are probably old enough to remember, where you had to plan out your route ahead of time. You didn't have a GPS. And that if you got lost, it wasn't the map's fault. The map is correct. So it's one thing to receive information or have the information at your fingertips. But then those directions that must be followed. And the following of those directions are entirely exposed and entirely vulnerable to the shortcomings of the person who is following the directions. But again, the tendency is to want to blame the directions. If we've been following a map and we get lost, the first thing we do is look at the map because we're sure the map must be wrong. And we've all been there. We've all done that, whether it's recipes or instructions or directions or whatever it is. And sometimes, again, we have experienced situations where we really were given bad directions, or we really were following bad instructions, especially in the last 10, 15 years. If you've bought something from Amazon, something technical or something mechanical that required some assembly, or something technical that required some kind of an installation process on your phone or on your computer, and that something, that device or that product or whatever it was that had this associated software or setup procedure or whatever associated with it came from China, or came from some other part of the world where let's just say English is not their native language. And we've all encountered instructions that, let's say, have been somewhat sparse in their information, if we want to be charitable, somewhat lacking in clarity. And because of that, and then we have all the directions that we've received, like from, I don't know, guidance counselors and career vocational counselors and maybe teachers or professors or family members, well-meaning friends, and so on and so forth, people with our best interests at heart who tell us, oh, go do this or go do that. Or we've gone to a restaurant on the glowing recommendation of a friend or a food critic, or we've gone to watch a movie because we read a review online and it said the movie is so spectacular, and it's gotten 5 stars from, it's got a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and you go and watch the movie and it's like one of the worst things you've ever seen in your life, and you come home and you double check the score. You say, I must have misread that score on Rotten Tomatoes, or there's something wrong with those reviews. And you go on to Rotten Tomatoes, and sure enough, the critic score is still 98%, right? But then the audience score is like 20%. So we've all been there. We've all experienced something like that. And we've experienced it quite a number of times. Like voting for politicians, right? Believing the promises of politicians, or believing the promises of advertising, or believing the promises of YouTube reviews and unboxings or whatever. And we go in with a great deal of enthusiasm and a great deal of expectation based on what? Based on the information that we've been given. And we end up disappointed because we make that investment, we follow through on the advice, and the results are certainly not what was promised, and certainly do not meet our desires and expectations. So, with that conditioning, with that experience, we may even develop a kind of cynicism or skepticism. Now, when we get a gut feeling and an intuition, it's not that we immediately apply that skepticism and cynicism. On the contrary, we might be, but this is divine guidelines now. This is a inspired direction. This is guidance from within and above. Surely this is not going to let me down. And the same enthusiasm that we have for the exciting new movie or the delicious new restaurant or the fantastic new product that we saw pitched to us over, a 30-minute period on late night television. If you remember those infomercials, and with what energy and vitality and enthusiasm those pitch guys can sell you everything from Ginzu knives to rotisserie chicken, rotisserie chicken ovens to chamois, right? Vince and ShamWow or Slap Chop, right? He's got, you know what I'm talking about. The late night infomercial pitchmen. And they can put so much energy and enthusiasm, and they can work you up into a frenzy of excitement and saying, yeah, I need one of those. That's going to make my life so much better and so much easier. And you throw down your credit card and the thing shows up whenever it shows up. You give us 6 to 8 weeks for delivery, was that thing that, whatever. And then you get it and it ends up being some cheap plastic crappy thing that ends up in a drawer in less than a week, and you never use it again for the rest of your life. It ends up in a box, in the box it came in the basement or in the garage, or you end up regifting it to somebody else. Not always, but it happens, and we've all been there. And because we've all been there, we've been disappointed so many times. So when we get an intuition, surely this won't disappoint. And all of that enthusiasm and excitement and energy and vitality and hope at the prospect now of guidelines and directions coming from a reputable source, the most reputable source, our inner essence, our higher self, our innermost individuated essence of the source of all essence and the source of all knowledge. Surely we can get behind that intuition and get behind that guidance. Surely that's safe. Surely that's prudent. And yet, how often have we gone down that road with that enthusiasm and that excitement and that determination to follow through on that gut feeling and do right by the still soft voice and do right by the guidance of our innermost, and it just fizzles out. Either nothing comes of it, or we end up in worse off than we were before, or we end up disappointed, our hopes dashed on the rocks of some dead end. We sit there and we are forced to reflect on how the hell did I get here? And if we are honest with ourselves, we'll ask, what the hell did I do wrong? And depending on our psychological makeup and perhaps the type of personality that we are. Are we quick to blame others, or are we more quick to assume that it's our fault? Because that's another character trait that many people have, that if something goes wrong in their life, oh, it must be my fault. Because there are many different ways that people approach disappointment. And one of the defense mechanisms that people develop is to assume that it didn't work out because they weren't deserving of it. They weren't worthy of it. Or they just blame everyone and everything. Or they'll come up with some excuse, some other excuse will materialize. So, but that, even that blaming of yourself and like being hard on yourself all the time, that's another trick of ego. It's another form of deflection. It's another actually defense mechanism, believe it or not. Because it's a way of identifying and attaching to the outcome in a certain way where it allows you to have agency in the outcome. Because that's what the ego wants, is agency over you and agency over outcomes. So when the outcomes are not what you expected or what you wanted, it's a trick of ego to say, oh, well, secretly, you are responsible for this outcome. So you had agency on this outcome, even though the outcome wasn't what you expected or wanted. It's still your fault. You're still responsible. And we can be very hard on that, and then or there are all sorts of psychological tricks and traps around the question of things not working out. But in the case of when things don't work out, when we're following intuition, that is particularly painful for someone on the path. That is particularly disheartening. Because if you're anything like me, you will put your heart and your soul and everything that you are into an all-out effort to do right by your intuition, to do right by the guidance of your innermost. In other words, you will act with such passion to fulfilling that guidance of the still soft voice. And when you throw all of yourself and your heart and your soul and your passion and everything that you have into an enterprise that was divinely inspired, that was intuited and given to you as this is what you must do. So you put everything into it, and then it doesn't work out. That's tough. That's very, very tough indeed. It's a bitter pill to swallow. If you've been through it, I don't need to tell you how disheartening it can be. What is more is that if you've been through it countless times, over and over and over and over and over on the alm of life, each time the intuition, the guidance, the enterprise, the project becomes a little bigger, a little more high stakes, a little more important, a little more critical and crucial, meaningful, purposeful, so that after each disappointment, after each failure, after each thing's not working out, and whatever you tell yourself, the reasons why, either it wasn't meant to, or I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't deserving, or the timing was wrong, or I didn't execute it properly, or someone didn't do their part, or just dumb luck, bad luck, whatever, or things didn't come together. Like, we can rationalize all the reasons why it didn't work out. And then we go into that slump, and then silence and no intuition and no guidance, and we're just like lost in the desert or adrift at sea. But then again, a flash of insight will come with a new enterprise, or the same enterprise, or related to the previous enterprise, and all of a sudden we can get a flash of insight to how, oh, now I see why that first thing wasn't supposed to work out, because it was a stepping stone to get me to this thing. And now this thing, this is going to be it. This must be it. And this is why that previous thing was just a test of my endurance, of my faith, of my loyalty, of my commitment, and my ability to go through on something that ends in nothing. But now this thing, this new thing, which is built on the ashes of that old thing that didn't work out, this new intuition, this new enterprise, this new direction, this new destination, this new stage in my journey, this is like the phoenix rising from the ashes. And now I'm going to put all of myself behind that and throw my heart and soul and passion into that, because surely this is going to work out. This is what I've been waiting for all my life. This is what I've been put on earth to do. And then after some period of time, 6 or 8 or 12 days, weeks, months, years, that new and exciting enterprise that came to you in intuition, that you threw all of yourself behind, it fizzles out or comes crashing to a halt and just dives down and is dead. Dead end. Another dead end. And there you are, right back where you started, with days or weeks or months or years of your life invested into something that took you nowhere and resulted in nothing. You're not anywhere ahead financially. You're not anywhere ahead, right? Materially, socially. In fact, you sacrificed friendships. You had family members and people, loved ones, telling you that you were absolutely crazy pursuing this enterprise. But you knew, because it was intuition. You knew you had to do it. You had to follow the still soft voice. You had to follow your higher self. You had to try. And everybody around you was saying, you're crazy. This is crazy what you're doing. And as a result of that, relationships got strained, and relationships with the people who loved you and the people who care about you, they started becoming more distant. Why? Because you weren't listening to them. You weren't following their directions. You weren't following their advice. And they just think you're off your rocker. So you make sacrifices. And maybe if this particular enterprise or this particular task that was assigned to you, that was given to you via intuition, the amount of time and effort and energy required to bring that into formation, to bring that into the world of action, to bring it into the world, meant that you had to give up the opportunity to go here, the opportunity to go there, the opportunity to be with these people, the opportunity to take a trip. Maybe you had to sacrifice your holidays and your days off and your weekends and your evenings. So a great deal of recreation time, a great deal of downtime. Maybe you ended up gaining weight because you only had so much energy and time in the day. So your exercise regimen was a bit off, and maybe You weren't walking to the store as often to buy as much salad as you normally do, and you ended up, lots of times having to just, fall back on maybe not the healthiest food. And we've all done it. All of us who are intuitive, and all of us who have followed the guidance of the still soft voice, have thrown ourselves completely and have been willing to sacrifice in order for the sake of doing what we've been told to do, following the guidance of our innermost GPS. And so when it crashes and burns, when we end up in another dead end, and we find ourselves right back where we started, or worse off than when we started, because any of us who have been entrepreneurs and we have invested money, or we have brought aboard investors, i.e., we have borrowed money to follow the guidance of our intuition. We have sold cars or furniture or homes, or we've taken out second mortgages on property. Why? Because we had a dream. And not because I had that dream, but that I was given that dream. It was given to me as an assignment, as here it is. You need to do this thing. And then it fizzles out, it fails, and now we are left holding the bag of all of the debt and all of the sacrifice, the debt that we have accumulated and the sacrifices that we have made. We have nothing to show for it. That does not put one in a good place. That does not feel good. Take it from me, one who has been in that place time after time after time after time after time, again and again, over and over and over, for the past 35 years. And actually, 30, almost 37 years. Getting close to 4 decades of nonstop disappointment. And in between these moments of failure, these moments of things not working out, these moments of dashed hopes and dashed expectations, the only thing that kept me going was the enthusiasm and the excitement and the encouragement and the hope and the faith, the unwavering faith that I have in my Father in heaven, in my intuition, in the still soft voice, in the guidance that I receive, in the knowing, the knowledge that I was put here on this earth for a reason, and the knowledge that, the self-knowledge that if I pursue anything else, I will be miserable in the pursuit. So what kept me going was the joy, the happiness, the excitement, the challenge. It's like the thrill of the hunt. And that's what keeps us going. It's like that thrill of the hunt, but it's not a primal animal thrill of the hunt. There's a deeper longing of purpose, this feeling of of direction and feeling of, that intuition, right? That's that guidance, that feeling of purposefulness, and knowing that we are not alone, and that purpose has been given to us. It's been assigned to us. It's our task. It's the meaning of life for us in any given moment. But gosh, when it doesn't work out, when it leaves you high and dry, holding on to the bag, deeper in debt, fewer friends, more distant family relationships, that hurts. And that really, really puts one, it can leave one in a place where one feels like abandoned, forsaken, forlorn, forgotten, used, abused, taken for granted. I mean, it's just, if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. It's like anyone who does anything for anybody and gets taken for granted and there's no, it seems as though there's no reciprocal return. It's like unrequited love. Like you plan a super romantic evening for your spouse on your anniversary, and you've spent all week planning and all day preparing, right down to the rose petals in the hallway and all the candlelight and the music and the incense, and your loved one comes home and they're like, "Oh, I've had such a bad day," and they go straight into the shower and straight into bed, because they've completely forgot the anniversary and didn't even notice the rose petals in the hallway, or the scented candles, or the candlelight, or the delicious smells coming from the oven, or the bottle of champagne by the bed in the ice bucket. And it's like you've gone to all this time and all this trouble and all this effort for the one that you love, and they've just completely, it's like you don't even exist. Only it's not a 10-year anniversary or a 25 anniversary. The anniversary is the number of days of your life, how old you are, or the number of years you have been following your intuition, the number of years you've been on your spiritual journey, and the amount, and all the years of dedication and devotion and faithfulness and everything else, and your innermost beloved, your immortal beloved, your higher self, your divine mother, just forgets, or seems to forget, and forsakes, and just leaves you high and dry, and you're left holding the bag, and it was all for nothing. Or that's how it feels. Leah says, "Yeah, deep. You always pull at my heartstrings." And Yang Sheng says, "Hi, Attlas. Can I ask what book or event triggered your spiritual journey?" None. My spiritual journey was triggered by an event in meditation when I was 5 years old. That's what triggered my spiritual journey, when my innermost being spoke to me in meditation. So it was no book. But if you read my book, you can read all about it, because the first part of my book is all about it. I talk all about my journey, how I got here. And Yangshan also gave us a wavy hand. And unfortunately, whatever Leia tried to give us here, we got a square box. So thank you, Leia, for the box. It's important for us to break out of the box. And come up, and oh man, my favorite name to pronounce on live on stream, Kamal Manzuki gave us a smiley face and some water, some wavy lines, or maybe it's air. Or if you really squint, or your eyesight's not so good, maybe it's a tarantula or some other creepy crawly. Leia said they were heart hands. Wonderful. Okay, not a box. Okay. Okay. Obviously, where I'm coming from, and if you've been there, and in some way, shape, or form, you have been there. We have all been there. And even if it wasn't intuition necessarily, but like in the example that I gave with a spouse or a loved one or a lover, a boyfriend, girlfriend, right? Or a mother or a father, trying to please your biological mother or biological father, right? And doing everything in your power to try to make them happy. And then they don't even notice, or don't even seem to notice, or don't even seem to care, because you can never please them because they're impossible to please. We've all been there. We've all felt what that's like, to pour our heart and soul, our time, our energy, our effort, our passion, our money, our resources, and put it all on the line and have it go nowhere and be left holding the bag. And when it's intuition we've been following and we end up there, the hurt, the pain, the slight, it cuts deeper than anything else. And it can be so discouraging, and it can be so deflating and demotivating. And obviously, you can tell that I know this from direct experience, and not just once or twice or 3 times, but so many times I've lost count. We're talking decades over decades of this. Time after time after time after time. What the hell is going on? What is it all about? What good? Like, are we really just as the proponents of the Black Lodge say we are? That we're just saps. We're just lackeys. And that because the Black Lodge, anybody who's a member of the Black Lodge listening to this is going to say, see, he admits it. Completely used and abused by the heavens. And they'll say, you think the Black Lodge is out to enslave you? You're already enslaved. At least when you work for the Black Lodge, you get pleasure. At least when you work for the Black Lodge, we let you do what you want to do. And you get pleasure, and you get riches, and you can get wealthy and fame and fortune, right? But look what you're doing. You're working for heaven. You're working for God, and you get nothing out of it. And he's working you to the bone, and he's working you like a slave, and you're getting nothing out of it. There's nothing in it for you. You just admit it. You just admitted it live on YouTube for the world. Right? This is exactly what this is what the Black Lodge will come to you. This is when we're most vulnerable, is when we are in those situations where we are in the dark night of the soul, when we have been led, it seems, that we have been led into another dead end. And we're left holding the bag, and we're worse off than where we were before. Well, we certainly feel that way. And it's we're tired. We've lost heart, and we're hopeless. We've lost all hope that the next time. So even if someone comes to us with the next big thing, because by this point we might even be so far down in the downward spiral of disappointment that we can't even hear the still soft voice, that we don't even want to hear it anymore. No. I'm not falling for that again, because I can't do this again. I can't do it again. I can't go through this again. I can't go another round of this getting my hopes up only to have them dashed 6 months later or 6 years later. I can't do it anymore. I'm spent. I'm at my wit's end. I'm at the end of my rope. So in that case, our Divine Mother has to orchestrate somebody else coming and presenting us with what normally we would get through intuition or in vision or inspiration from within. But because we're so tired and we're so fed up, we can't receive it that way. So somebody else. But it's like we don't even want to see it, or we can't even see it. We can't even hear it. That's when we are most vulnerable. That's when the demon comes. That's when the black magicians show up. That's when the temptation comes. That's when the clever pitch man comes with the can't miss, can't lose cryptocurrency scheme, or the online whatever, or the some business venture, or some get rich quick scheme, or some self-help guru comes and convinces you to sign up for their course. It's only going to cost you $1,000, but don't worry, there's a 12-month payment program. Or MBNA comes with an offer for a credit card. Or, right? This is when you're most vulnerable, when you're weak. That's when the parasites come. That's when the vultures come, right? The vultures been circling above, right, for days. Vultures are very patient, and they can sit there and circle around for days, waiting for somebody there or something to lose all strength and all hope, and basically lose the will to live, the will to keep going. And whatever it is, animal, mineral, or vegetable, right? It falls to its knees in the sand, and that's when the vultures swoop down and do what they do. Yeah. Problems with intuition, problems with following the still soft voice. But is it really all that simple? Have I given you the full picture? I've shared with you something that's a universal experience, something probably that you've been through, maybe not as many times, but maybe more often. But is that really all there is to it? Yang Shang asks or says, Attlas, do you have objective clairvoyant? Well, if I knew what objective clairvoyant meant, I would be able to answer that. And he says, sorry, should be objective clairvoyance. If you have, can you project by will? Or can you see all the dimensions now? So again, clairvoyance Clairvoyance is a term that can mean many things to many people. And it all depends on the nature of your clairvoyance. So, for example, some people can see auras. And some people can see energy without seeing auras. And some people can see archetypes. That is the unformed essences of form. In other words, clairvoyance that extends to the zero dimension, the world of archetypes, the world of absolute, the seventh dimension. But we call it the zero dimension because it's the first dimension of manifestation. If someone has the ability to see all of the dimensions right now, that person is a resurrected master. If someone claims to be able to do all that right now, here and now, then that's a claim that they're making. That's all I'll say about that. I don't know what you mean by, can you project by will? I don't know what you mean by that. My clairvoyance is limited to the supernal worlds of the sixth dimension and up. Why? Because in the four bodies of sin, I live with a house guest, one who occupies and who I've been wrestling with for a very long time. But that's comes with that limitations of being able to see, for example, in the fourth dimension. So clairvoyance of energy and but also emotions. It's very difficult for me to read between the lines and read people's emotions and so on and so forth, because that's basically Asperger's. And that's very common on those who are on the spectrum. So I have epilepsy, but everybody on the spectrum is living with a very potent entity that's occupying those bodies, and it's occupying consciousness that would normally be applied to being able to see clairvoyantly on those levels of reality in those dimensions. But it's precisely that consciousness that's bottled up inside this entity that blocks and prevents us from having clairvoyance in these lower dimensions. So that's why so many individuals who are autistic savants in some way. They show incredible intelligence, and they show incredible insight, and they show incredible, a lot of them, ethics, if they've resisted the temptations of their demon in the lower dimensions, lower meaning fourth and fifth, the third, fourth, and fifth, to be honest, and the infernal worlds, of course, the lower fifth. But the four bodies of sin are the third dimension. So the physical body, the vital body, the astral body, and the mental body, those are the four bodies of sin. And that's where anyone who lives with an entity, lives with a demon, is possessed in that way, and of course in the subconscious mind, in the lower fifth dimension. So someone who's an autistic savant is living with an entity that blocks them from having clairvoyance in the lower dimensions. And that's what gives rise to their social awkwardness, Asperger's syndrome, manic behavior, bipolar, schizophrenia, right? All of these ailments. However, if in their moments of lucidity, in their moments of clarity, in their moments of consciousness, they gain access to clairvoyance It's like you fish where the fish are. If you can't see here, you do this, right? If I'm blind here, right, I gotta look over that. I gotta look higher. And you invariably direct your conscious attention in and up, because when you're on the spectrum, you don't have a lot of friends. You're not popular. You're socially awkward. So you spend a lot of time alone. You spend a lot of time with yourself. And invariably, people who spend a lot of time with themselves, or in their they tell people on the spectrum, people with autism, they're in their own little world, right? Yeah, they're in their inner world. And in that inner world, they are far more welcome than they are in the external world, where they're socially awkward, where they're strange, where they're weird, where they don't know what to say, they don't know how to behave, they say the wrong thing at the wrong time, et cetera, right? And they have difficult reading, right? Because dyslexia is again related to that. There's dyslexia, there's epilepsy, all of these conditions on the so-called spectrum. So, but again, it's like someone who is blind develops other senses. Their other senses become more developed to compensate for the fact that they're blind. Someone who cannot see and does not have any clairvoyance in the third and fourth and fifth dimension, in the four bodies of sin, their consciousness will develop to compensate, because consciousness must flow, because consciousness wants to create experience and create knowledge. And so if it's incapable and wants to create connection, and if it's impaired, if it's blocked from doing so in the lower dimensions, it will just naturally seek to overcome that by connecting on the levels that it can, which is the sixth and seventh dimension. Which is why so many autistic or people on the spectrum, they have such an affinity for animals. And they have this capacity to like commune with animals and others on a deeper level. And they have such an affinity for music and for mathematics, right? We call them autistic savants, because music and mathematics is a seventh dimensional faculty. It comes from the world of Attlas. And so the more impaired someone is down here, the more potential clairvoyance they have up there. And something like that is very true for me. That's a kind of long-winded answer to that question, but it's a question that opens up such a Pandora's box. Like the Pandora's box we opened with this topic today, the problems with intuition, the problems with following the still soft voice. But if you recall, the title of this live stream was The Problems with Intuition. The subtitle was The Obstacles to Following the Still Soft Voice, or the Still Small Voice. The obstacles. Recently, I watched a video online. Tom Bilieu. Should I share this? Here, let me just. Oh wait, I shouldn't share that. This is his channel. He's one of these. His channel is called Impact Theory, and he's all about getting important, not necessarily famous, but successful thinkers or deep thinkers of various different various different backgrounds. And just the subtitle of his channel here, debating the world's most important ideas. Now, he's a very intellectual fellow, but he's also a billionaire. He's a self-made billionaire. And so he cares about success, worldly success, material success, but he also cares about, in his own words, the maximum benefit for the maximum number of people. If I got that right, if I did justice to that. And there is one video that I watched, an interview with someone, and you see he's interviews like, there's Jordan Peterson and Ray Dalio and just, you might recognize some of the faces in the videos. I don't know everybody by name, but there's a particular video I'm looking for, and so I think what I will do is, that video was recommended to me, so I will go back to where that video was recommended to me, and I should be able to click it and pull it right up somehow. Okay. Now, I should have probably spent more time preparing this, but like queuing it up to the right spot. But I also don't know if I've shared the sound. So why don't I just remove it? And what if I... Technology. Okay, share screen. Entire screen. Also share system audio. Yes. And that's the screen I want to share. Share. Okay. Hide that. Okay, so if you bear with me, this fellow is David Bayer. And here he's going to tell a story. I may have to play around a bit to find the right spot. So
how do we change the habitual pattern?
But let me turn the volume down while I try to find where he's speaking.
Right? It's the way that in Orange County, California, and I don't know why in first grade they had a cybernetic loop and go, oh, those are the neural networks to change ourselves, and everybody raised their hand.
So he's a materialist, but he was a drug addict about 10 years ago. He was a wealthy, successful. I'm not even sure what he was doing for a living, but he's one of these people who turn their life around and are now giving advice. They're now like a self-help guru because they are applying the principles that they use to turn their life around, and they're applying it and helping others to turn their life around. Right? So in this video, he shares a specific story of one of his clients, and I want to play it. I want you guys to hear the story that he tells, because it's all about intuition, or it's related to intuition and the problems of intuition. So just a moment. Young Shang says, sorry, should be objective clairvoyance. If you have, can you project by will, or can you see the dimension? Oh, sorry. I know, we already got that one. Okay.
Deep problem that I have with the universe, right? Gain more prowess to
Will dictate your thoughts on a moment by moment basis. So if you believe that, money is hard to make, and then that emotion, then right?
Here he's talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and his theory that when we're in the sympathetic nervous system, where the emotions are telling us lies, and then we're in this parasympathetic nervous system, when we're calm and relaxed, and so on, then we're capable of knowing the truth, and that's the basis for his self-help theory.
Beingness that I could be in at any given point in time. I could either be in a powerful state of some form of fear. I'm always in one of those. Through my journey, what I realized was the only cause of that switch to be flipped was my own thinking. The meaning that I...
Yeah, so he's... I should have this on screen, shouldn't I? Might as well let you guys be watching this. This is where he's talking about his theory about...
within my own control. I needed coaches, and as the coaches were coaching...
That we have the choice of being in the sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system, and, you know, we can be in a place of power, we can place of weakness, and blah blah, the usual self-help stuff. I'm wondering if maybe it's here.
You can come up with a better story. There are amazing tools out there like breath work, plant. I'll give you a prime example. I was working personally coaching.
Okay, this is the story now. So he's going to give us a prime example of what he's talking about, but so listen carefully to the story, and then we're going to talk about it, because this is very clearly illustrates one of the problems with intuition.
Now we can start to talk about the larger metaphysical philosophy behind all of this, right? But I'll give you a prime example. I was working, personally coaching a 29-year-old Egyptian Muslim young man, super successful, had his first multi-million-dollar business at 19 years old, was running one of the largest companies in his category at 29 years old. And I'd been coaching him, and he was out one night in South Beach with a bunch of movers and shakers. And vice president of the sports team, #1 DJ, fashion designers, whatever it was, he called me the next day and he said, listen, I moved into a primal state last night and I couldn't get out of it, so I need you to coach me on it. Because I know his vision for his life now, the most important thing for him is to operate from a powerful state of being. I said, okay, so what happened? He said, well, I was there and I noticed that I started having anxiety. So I know I moved into a primal state. I said, what'd you do next? He said, I took a look at the thinking that was causing it. I said, what did you find? He said, I was thinking that I don't belong here. I was like, okay, got it. So then what did you do? And what we teach a couple of things, but what we teach at the highest level of this work is that you're able to actually see the thinking that's not true as not true. And that's different than a lot of the other modalities I tried to use to evolve. You can change your state, you can reframe something, you can come up with a better story. There are amazing tools out there like breath work, plant tech. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff out there which we can get into, right? Yeah,
Nice, I like that.
there's a bunch of stuff out there, right? But we're very focused on the personal technology, not the third-party tools, right? But explored a lot of them. So what we believe is the fastest way for you to eradicate a limiting belief is to actually see the limiting belief as untrue. And the moment that happens, there's a reorganization in your brain, like you can't unsee it. Once you see the lie as a lie, right, there's a huge shift. It reorients you to the experiences of your life. It reorients you, to money, to relationships. So I said to him, so what happened when you saw that you were thinking, I don't belong here? And he says, it seemed true. He goes, now I knew it wasn't, because he bought into what we teach. And I said, okay, great. So I'll coach you on it. And, you know, with coaching, you have a lot of leverage. And you don't always have to use the leverage I'm going to give you an example of. But I knew he was a spiritual. His faith was very important to him. So I said, let me ask you a question. You believe in God, don't you? He said, yes. I said, the omnipotent, omniscient, kind of all-knowing type of God? He goes, absolutely. And I said, then how did your God put you in the wrong place on Friday night where you actually don't belong? And there was a pause. And I heard him on the other end of the line, and he goes, oh my God. And I said, what is it? He goes, I belong everywhere I am. That's a fundamental reorientation to the experiences of your life. And what
Let's go. Let him say a few more.
That's the deepest, most permanent, fastest way to actually move through the crazy unreality that we've created for ourselves as a result of adopting a bunch of other crazy people's beliefs when we were kids, right? To start reconnecting with what's really true. And so in that moment of seeing that you actually believe everywhere, belong everywhere that you are, you move back into a powerful state, and now you're moving forward with your life in a powerful way.
Okay. What is the fundamental? Benjamin says, that's pretty cool listening to the experiences. Here we have someone, a coach, a life coach, with a very methodical and very simple and very practical methodology of choosing whether or not you're in a state of powerful being or a state of weakness, and if you're in your parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system, and as a sort of broad strokes, right? And he relays this story of a client of his who's in the South Beach party, surrounded by movers and shakers, and starts feeling anxious and has this, it occurs to him, this thought pops into his head: I don't belong here. And when he calls up his coach, his life coach, his mentor, knowing that he's religious, says, you believe in God, right? The all-knowing, omnipotent God. Why would God put you somewhere where you're not supposed to be? And on the other end, the individual says, oh my God, I'm supposed to be everywhere I am. And with that, this guru, this life coach, this story, the conclusion is that the anxiety that the person was feeling was a sign, the marker, that the thought that came into his head, I don't belong here, was a lie. And the interpretation, the rationalization was, why would God put you somewhere where you're not supposed to be? And then there's a flash of insight. Oh my God, I'm supposed to be wherever God puts me. And it's almost like the way he tells the story, it's almost like the person, his client, the Muslim, the Egyptian Muslim of faith, in the midst of this party, whose first insight was, I'm not supposed to be here, but had anxiety around that, now has another insight, but I am really supposed to be here. Do you see the problem? Can you identify the problem of intuition that David Bayer's story illustrates? And more importantly, remember what I was saying at the beginning? It's about sometimes the directions, sometimes it's not the fault of the directions. It's the fault of the person who's reading or misreading, misinterpreting the directions. Can you spot the problem? Can you see the mistake that's being made in the story? Do you want me to play the story again so that you can listen carefully? This is an interactive an opportunity for interaction, an opportunity for you to rely on your own intuition, your own guidance, your inner guidance. Do you see anything? Is there anything The young man is in a party surrounded by movers and shakers. He has this thought pops into his head. I don't belong here. And that thought is accompanied by this feeling of anxiety, which means he's in his sympathetic nervous system. He's becoming agitated. He's becoming anxious. He's in fear. But when he checks in with his life coach says, oh, okay. So how do you feel? He says, well, I felt anxious. Okay. What does that tell you about the thought? Well, because a parasympathetic nervous system and the thought, well, it can't be true. And he says, well, let's double check that. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in the almighty, omnipotent God? Why would God put you somewhere where you don't belong? And he goes, oh my God, I belong everywhere that I am. And the conclusion from the life coach and the guru, who believes that he's done right by his client, is that now his client, from that point forward, anywhere he is and anywhere that he goes, if he gets the insight that you don't belong here, he's going to say, oh, no. I belong everywhere that I am. The intellectual, the rational mind that has its mechanical theories looks and only looks to the mind. What was your thought? What was your emotion? Right? David Bayer is not talking about higher self. David Bayer is not talking even about intuition. He doesn't even mention intuition. But clearly, it was an intuitive insight that the young man had surrounded, that Egyptian Muslim man who's very spiritual, surrounded in a South Beach party by movers and shakers, which means surrounded by people who are living in opulence, decadence, greed, materialism. And he was taken there to have the experience, to receive the insight that I don't belong here. This is not my crowd. This is not my scene. These are not the people that I want to surround myself with. And that insight caused an egoic reaction. His ego became anxious about that. The knowledge that he didn't belong there, but he was there, the ego reacted, fear reacted to that, exploited that opportunity. You are where you don't belong, so I'm there, so I'm going to feel uncomfortable now because I know I don't belong here. It was a fear reaction to an intuitive knowing, an intuition. But the guru, the life coach, with his sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system theory, and only looking on the surface of the mind and the emotions, says, oh, but you're anxious. You're in your primal state. You're in your sympathetic nervous system. You cannot trust what your mind tells you in that state. And he says, but why would God put you someplace where you don't belong? And then comes the second intuition, the insight, the revelation. Oh my God, I belong wherever God puts me. I belong wherever I am. And now the second insight, the second intuition, is now exploited and used by the mind and with the encouragement of the guru, of the self-help guru, to negate the first intuition. Because if you recall, the video that I put out, that's the video for the campaign, Attend for Human 3.0, the video that describes Human 3.0, and describes human 2.0. And the problem with human 2.0 is that the rational mind works in binary duality, this or that, right or left, on or off. I belong here or I don't belong here. The faculties of the mortal vessel, the faculties of the mortal receiving the directions, receiving the intuition, and interpreting it with the mechanical rational mind cannot square the two intuitive truths. I don't belong here, and God put me here, which means I belong here. I belong wherever God puts me. That he put me there for a reason. But what if the reason God put the young Muslim Egyptian man in the middle of the lion's den, surrounded by the materialists, the greedy, the what have you, so that he could receive that knowledge that he doesn't belong there? How can you know where you belong and don't belong if you never experience what being there is like? How do you know if you like or don't like peas if you've never tried peas? Experiential knowledge requires experience. That's not always the case. You don't have to murder someone to know that murder is wrong, right? But murder is a kind of extreme thing. It's sort of self-evident. It's not a real stretch. It's not a difficult one to grasp. But where you belong, who you should associate with, what crowd you should be a part of, you don't really know. You don't know anything about those people over there. So go and spend some time with them. But while you're spending some time with them, be open and aware to receiving some guidance. And if you're feeling anxious when you're around those people, or that guidance comes and the guidance makes you start feeling anxious, you be aware of that. Just observe that. Be aware of that. But that doesn't, just because you're anxious doesn't mean that whatever thought popped into your head must be false. Because it's unclear in when he tells the story, which came first, the chicken or the egg. Was he anxious first? And then he thought to himself that that was the fear, the anxiety that was saying, oh, I don't belong here. God put you there. You belong there in that moment to realize that you don't belong there. But you can only know this experientially. You can only know this consciously. Only the superior faculty of consciousness can hold a paradox to be true, both sides of a dichotomy, of a binary duality to be true, and hold them simultaneously to be true, without any conflict, without any paradox. But the mind can't do it. The mind doesn't want to do it. The mind likes its binary duality, 1 or 0, yes or no, this or that, on or off. It's much more nuanced. And yeah, you really don't belong there. But in order to know that, you had to experience that. And so God put you there so that you could experience and know exactly where you don't belong. That's why there's some people who go through their life, I'll try anything once. Why? Well, because I don't want to be ignorant. And I'm willing to try anything once. But if I try it once and it doesn't work out, I'm not doing it again. That's enough for me to know that that's not for me. I went skydiving and I did not enjoy it, and it was not a fun, and it was just, it was not for me. But I did it once. Right? So here's a very clear example of problems with intuition. It's the problem of interpretation and application of intuition and rationalizations around the intuition and the projection, the imposition of the rational mind's own theories and beliefs and biases, and the exploitation of the intuition to arrive at a conclusion that is beneficial to the ego. Because, fantastically, when he has his insight, oh, I belong wherever God puts me, I belong wherever I am. Well, all of a sudden, his anxiety vanished. And the guru sees that and interprets that as, you see, my system works. He's now back in a position of power. He's back he's in a state of powerful being. Why? Because his anxiety vanished. Or it's because now fear, which is control, is back in control. Whereas before, fear was triggered by the intuition and the knowledge that I don't belong here. And the demon of fear, the demon of control, which very much wants him there and wants him to be surrounded by these powerful movers and shakers and these influential people. Why? Because maybe he can graft onto them or be able to use their power and influence for his own benefit. That's the demon. So when he says he receives that intuition and the mind says, oh, I don't belong here, then the fear reacts to that and becomes anxiety. Oh my God, he's gonna leave. But these are our people. These are our people. This is where we belong. This is where the demon belongs. The fear and control, which motivates a lot of those movers and shakers, are motivated by the desire to control, to be masters of their universe, to be masters of the world. That's what movers and shakers are, by and large. So of course, there was a risk, there was a fear that oh my God, he might leave. So the thought occurs to him I'm going to call my guru to check and find out and get an answer. And he gets an answer. And the intuition is, yeah, well, God did put you here and you do belong wherever God puts you. Because it's true, in the moment, that's where he needed to be. But now he interprets that as, oh, that's where I'm always, so that means from now on, wherever I am once, that means I'm meant to be there all the time for the rest of my life. That is, you see, that's the all or nothing way that the mind interprets things. That intuition, that momentary thing, because information is on a need-to-know basis, and intuition, like your GPS guidance system, tells you to turn left here at this intersection, at this point on the map, at this point on the journey, you are supposed to make a left-hand turn. You need to be in this intersection here and now in this moment. That's all that intuition was telling him. Just like your GPS. Turn left now. But the mind takes that and says, "Oh, well, that means I need to build a house in the middle of that traffic circle." because my intuition told me that I have to go around that traffic circle. Well, I'm supposed to be in that traffic circle. That's where I'm going to make my house, in the middle of that traffic circle. Now, that's ridiculous, but that's how the mind thinks. That's how the mind reads those instructions, reads that guidance. Because it's intuition, it's divine. So the mind is going to exploit that. The mechanical mind will. And it'll read subjectively into that intuition in accordance with the desires of the egos, which ultimately want to control us. And so the ego, he had an ego reaction to the first intuition, but did he have an ego reaction to the second intuition? No, strangely not. If he's right, if Bayer is right, okay, if the guy was feeling anxious about being at the party, how can a thought or a belief change your anxiety for being in a place? You think that if you have stage fright, if you've ever done public speaking and you've experienced stage fright, do you think your beliefs can eradicate the stage fright? If you have arachnophobia or any phobia of any kind, do you think that believing that that spider is not going to harm you, or that the you're believing that, like, if you have fear of heights, there's nothing you can think or believe that's going to change your fear of heights, because the phobias are powerful expressions and manifestations of fear, which are primal and automatic, which are happening on a level that's beyond the fifth dimension, or your capacity for you have to overcome that. You have to comprehend your fears. You have to face your fears and comprehend your fears. You have to know, in other words, to overcome, but not believe. It's an example of problems with intuition, and I have another one for you just in a moment. But first, Yang Sheng says, can you recommend any book for a beginner of Gnostic study? Yes. But we'll just get it out of the way. Give me a moment. Well, here. Oh, gosh. Stupid. So, Yang Sheng, I can recommend my book, right? What in Hell is With Us? I can recommend that book. But we can also recommend books by Master Samael, and there's The Perfect Matrimony, but I would probably I can. This one's good. The Day Spring of Youth, and all of these are good. But you asked for beginner Gnostic, right? So the Gnostic prayer book is something that you might eventually want to get. But here's one called An Introduction to Gnosis. But this, it may be a little, you may be already beyond this book, but I don't know that. Only you can know that. So there's only one way to know that. The one that I'm looking at, Revolution of the Dialectic, is really good, but it's more advanced. So the one that I'm looking for, here it is. There. It's called The Treatise on Revolutionary Psychology. So if you click on it, then up comes this link, which is now in the chat and on the screen. And obviously it's glorian.org. You just click on books, and all of the books that we were browsing all show up. Okay, so, and remember that when you click on the link to the book, you actually have a the actually book page will very often go through the chapters, and very often the chapters are actually online, so you can actually read it online and you can get a sense of the contents of the book. And it has all the places it's available and so on and so forth. And so this is one that I could very readily recommend. It's a very light, it's a short read, it's a light read, and so it's a very good entree. It's a very good spear of the arrowhead. And it's also one of the most important books that Master Samael Aun wrote. It's essentially the Alm of Life, but expressed in like 162 pages in different language, right? It's in English, but different way of explaining what I call the Alm of Life. Okay, so coming back to the topic at hand, Leah said, observe, don't absorb. So we say don't identify and don't attach, but absorb is as good a word as any, right? So you observe what's going through, but not become absorbed in it. Benjamin says that he agrees. I agree. I met someone who's a millionaire, and she said she'd like to be friends with me. She can afford a $1.5 million Rolex, which is more than 10 years of my salary. Honestly, it made me feel like I might not belong in her world. So, yeah, we get these insights, we get these intuitions, right? And then Justin says, fear is primal because it is a reason we refuse to accept. Fear of heights or fear of falling. For if you are strive at the edge of a cliff, it is wisdom to heed the danger of the edge. Fear is primal because it is a reason we refuse to accept. Fear of heights or fear of falling. Yes, but you know what? When you get into a car and drive, you put on the seatbelt not because you're afraid, but because you know. You do not need fear in order to know. You just need to know. You need to be aware, but you don't need fear to draw your attention to that awareness. Fear draws your attention of the awareness of the danger and the prudency of being careful and being mindful. Fear draws your consciousness and bottles it up. See, fear wants you to become absorbed in it, okay, instead of just observing it. Fear absorbs you into itself, where now you're thinking about, oh my god, if I fall off the edge of this building, I'm going to die. Or if a really strong wind blows, or what if this railing gives way, and then, right? So fear is already fantasizing everything that could go wrong, that's going to result in your death, or that's going to result in a terrible outcome. You do not need fear to be careful. You do not need fear to guide you through life. If you rely on fear, that's where you're going to end up, in fear, because you cannot feed the beast without making it stronger. If you keep returning to the same mechanical primal modus operandi, you're going to end up mechanical and primal and animal if you keep relying on those faculties. But if you rely on your consciousness, you can be completely at ease and at peace and confident and say, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to go skydiving, or I'm going to go mountain climbing, or rock climbing. And sure, I've got to be extra careful, because if I slip and fall, I'm going to die. Okay. So I know that. But you can't rock climb if you're afraid. It can't be done. You can't do it. Because you won't have any energy or ability to focus or concentrate or strength, because you'll be terrified. Yang Sheng says, thank you, Atlas. I just want to clarify my previous question. Can you project to your astral body by will? Okay. Sorry if it's too personal. Just want to chat with you like a friend. So the answer is yes and no. And that's the best answer you're going to get from me. The answer is yes and no. And so if you want to comprehend that answer, you have to be in your consciousness, because the mind is going to say, how can that be? Because remember, the mind is binary duality. It's yes or no. But it's the consciousness that can hold two apparently opposite positions to be both true. It's like that last scene from one of the final scenes of Kingdom of Heaven, when Balian asks Salahuddin, what is Jerusalem worth? And Salahuddin says, nothing. And he walks away and he turns around and he says, everything. So, all right. Speaking of personal, everybody should know by now that launched in October was a little enterprise, a little venture called Attlas CA, Atlas Conscious Arts. And with that was a campaign with the goal of raising 250,000 US, or we ended up making it 369,000 Canadian. And as you know, there was a video that I made associated with this campaign, and this is the 6-minute version that plays on the website, and then the 26-minute version is broken down into 3 parts, right? The problem, solution, and resolution. And then we had our campaign kickoff, that 10-hour live stream that I did back on October 4th, right? It was a 10-4 Human 3.0, and then we got the the video going in the background here. Suffice it to say, the campaign was not a success. We got nowhere near. We didn't even get 1/100th of the donations that we had been looking for, or maybe you could say 1/100th, right? Because 369,000. We on the website we show about 4,000, right? So maybe a 1%, but nowhere near what it needed to be in order for this venture, this enterprise to be, quote, successful as a campaign anyway, as a crowdfunding campaign. And you all know that I poured my heart and soul into that campaign. And you were all, those of you who are around, for the making of this video, back in June, it was over an hour long, and it was just a PowerPoint presentation, and I actually played draft versions of it for you and got feedback from you in order to help me cut it down. And Azazel made the recommendation of breaking it into 3 parts and exactly the way it turned out. You helped me a lot in the 6 months that it took. Well, not exactly 6 months. 6 months between May, June, and now. So the last 2 months I'm including in that 6 months, but it was really a 4-month work effort to pull this video together. And it basically meant that my summer was spent indoors in the basement on the computer working on this, a minimum of 6 hours a day, and most days 10 hours a day. And I was certain that this video, this crowdfunding campaign I was being told to do it the way it appears, because everything was coming to me through intuition, through inspiration. That surely this now, after 35 years of searching, and at the age of 51, surely now this campaign is the path to Attlas Conscious Arts, to get us the boost, to get us the initial capital, right? So we're all lined up on the starting line, and we just need to start the race now, right? Because you can't make money without spending it. And well, didn't pan out. Another in a long series of me following my intuition and putting all of my time and energy and faith and hope behind an enterprise, behind a venture, behind a project, including writing my book, which has sold no copies. But it was when this project came to me that I was like, oh, okay, now I know I had to write the book. Because by writing the book, I have a gift for this crowdfunding campaign. I have a thank you gift for anybody that puts, and the book is available in different formats. So I can offer a certain pledge amount. I can offer, first of all, for any pledge amount, people can get a download of a digital copy of the book in PDF or EPUB versions for their e-readers. And then at a certain level, they can get a soft cover copy of the book. And then at a higher level, they can get a hard copy of the book. And at an even higher level, they can get a signed, personalized, signed hard copy of the book. So we have all the different tiers covered. And I've done all the work, right? It's a unique gift. It's something that you can't get anywhere else. It's something that nobody else can give you. And so it all made sense that last year I had to write the book so that this year I would have the gift to make the crowdfunding campaign successful. It made sense. It made perfect sense. And yet it didn't pan out. And if you recall, I fell into a deep depression. By the end of October, I had binged on a whole crap ton of Halloween candy, because remember I was expressing to you what it feels like to follow your intuition and to feel like you're left high and dry. This has been happening to me ever since I've returned from Japan, which was 25 years ago, 27 years ago. My intuition took me to Japan, and in Japan, I had one of the best years of my life. And intuition brought me back from Japan, and I've told that story many times. But upon returning from Japan, I fell into consulting. It just presented itself to me, and I just became a consultant without any effort whatsoever. And I'd been on this treadmill of getting excited and enthusiastic of the next project and the next client and the next venture and the next and the next and the next and the next, and building up and building up and building up to like inches, millimeters of success, and then collapse. And then again and again and again and again. And now, no longer for clients, but well, sort of in a way. But at least it's my own thing, my own brand, and connecting back to Attlas Arts and all the rest of it. And the stakes are so high and everything else. And so it just made sense that now this finally, my goose is going to come in. That's not how my goose is cooked. My ship comes in. Get your idioms right. We celebrated Christmas dinner with family last night, and so we had a goose, and that's why I have goose on the mind, goose on the brain, goose brain. So suffice it to say, it was just another repeating pattern, and so I fell into a real dark night of the soul back in October, November. And it was in the darkness and the humiliation of this failed crowdfunding campaign that I attained the next level of comprehension and realization and understanding about the nature of the path and following intuition and following the guidance of the still small voice. And the crystallization of all of that came into being thanks to a friend of mine who was the one who sent me this video. And he was following his intuition. He saw this and he said, you know, Attila needs to see this. And when I watched this, and especially this part of this video, I knew what I was going to be talking about today, what I was going to be sharing with you today. And it finally put a punctuation point on all of the suffering that I had brought upon myself. Not because I was following my intuition, not because I was following the still soft voice, not because I was doing and investing all of myself into whatever enterprise, whatever project, whatever it was that I was being guided from within to apply myself to, whatever was showing up in my life serendipitously that I recognized as saying, this is the next thing. This is the next thing. No, that's not why I was suffering. When all of them led nowhere and all of them led to dead ends, or all of them imploded or crashed and burned, or whatever the outcome was. No. The suffering came from my expectations, my beliefs, what I was imposing, what I was grafting onto the intuition. You see, intuition just says, do this, do that. The GPS just says, turn left, turn right. GPS makes no promises that it's going to get you there. The GPS makes no promises that when you reach your destination, you're going to be met with fanfare and you're going to be showered with success and showered with wealth and showered with validation. GPS makes no promise. Neither does intuition. Especially when in the moment, the only information you're getting is turn left, turn right. You don't belong here, but you had to be here in order to know you don't belong here. From one moment to the next. But even then, the intuition is you do belong here. You needed to be here. From one moment to the next, both of those statements, you don't belong here, and you needed to be here. You need to be wherever God puts you, wherever I put you, wherever I tell you to go, that's where you need to go. But you don't belong here, despite the fact that I told you to come here. Those are not mutually exclusive. In experience and in practicality and in truth, capital T, in consciousness, both of those positions are true. I don't belong here and I have to be here. And from one moment to the next, those appear to be completely contradictory. What is Jerusalem worth? Nothing, everything. And they're both true. But what isn't true is all the politics and all the drama and all the pardon my French, all the bullshit that we layer on top of these beliefs, we layer on top of these intuitions. You must make a video and a campaign, and you must call it a 10 for Human 3.0. Hallelujah. This is it now. This is the vehicle. This is what's going to get me the success. This is what's going to get me the resources that I need to actually do my life's work and actually be this, have the success, and actually this and actually that. Right? No. The intuition was you need to make this video. You need to make it as compact, as concise, as packed with information as possible in the shortest possible time. And you have to have it done by a certain date. And, you know, the directions. The directions make no promises. The intuition made no... The intuition said, do all this, and you will be showered with wealth and fame and success. No. That was my demon. That was my fear. That was my desire to control outcomes. That was my desire for comfort and security as a mortal vessel. That was my desire of someone who has been in the end of this rope and going through this process over and over and over and over, disappointment after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. Because why? Because I was identifying and attaching myself to outcomes that were entirely of my manufacture. They were fantasies. They were fever dreams generated by my own mechanical neuropsychological AI. And what did they do? They exploited the intuition. They exploited the opportunity, that divine message, that inspiration, that insight. And they wove themselves around it like the layers of a Tootsie Pop, the sugary, candy-coated layers of a Tootsie Pop around the nugget of a Tootsie Roll in the middle. Where that nugget of intuition is objectively true and what we must do. But all the other stuff layered on top of it is exploiting that. So that we begin identifying and seeing all the layers on top of it as that also must all be true. And that also all came from my innermost. It didn't come from my innermost. What came from my innermost was, you must make this video. What came from my innermost is, you must go to Japan. And what came from my innermost is, now you must go home. Now you must leave Japan. All the other emotion and drama and this and that and beliefs around why I went to Japan and why I had to be there and now why I had to leave and that's all the human condition. That's all just the BS. And so with the book, you must write this book. And you know how long it took me to write that book, and you know how big it is, how thick it is, how packed it is with information, how long it took me to write. It took me 10 years to write that book. To write the substance of the book, and then a full year to synthesize it and into an actual manuscript, an actual book, and have it published and everything else. And then it didn't sell like a single copy. And for the better part, for the first half of this year, I was going through like depression, because I was feeling forlorn and I was feeling forsaken for a time, because here I had spent the last 10 years of my life preparing for the content of this book, and it seemed like it was all for nothing. because the book wasn't selling and I couldn't get any traction, and it doesn't matter. I spent money on marketing that book. I didn't sell a single copy. I marketed to book clubs where people join because they're looking for new books. And I even got a very, very good review on that in that book club, and I ended up on the recommended list and everything else, and then nobody bought it. Nobody. Because June came along and the next project, this campaign, and now it was clear why I needed to write that book, not to sell copies, but to give them as thank you gifts for the campaign, which was the real thing, that we needed. And that's why we needed the book. So now I was all relaxed about it. I said, oh, okay. But now I built up this identification and attachment to a whole different outcome, which was we're going to raise a whole bunch of money so I can hire some close colleagues of mine to become a team, and we're going to create this entity, and we're going to go out into the world, and we're going to change the world. We're going to do what we're here to do. And we're going to do it by raising this money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why we need this video, and that's what we need the book for. This whole story, right, was fabricated. And this whole outcome. And here we are. We have, what's today? Okay, so we have 15 days left, 2 weeks left in the campaign. And we're nowhere near having that fairy tale ending that I identified with and attached myself to, that was dreamt up in a fever dream around the intuition of you must make this video and you must conduct this campaign. And that's why I fell into that terrible fit of depression at the end of November, which finally got me to let go once and for all any and all identification and attachment to outcomes. And I am through interpreting intuition. I am finished grafting or allowing my mind, allowing my desires to graft their ideas and beliefs and conceptualizations of the outcome that they would like, that they want. I'm through allowing any of that to weave itself around the nugget of truth, which is the intuition itself, which is the simple GPS command. Turn left, turn right. Go straight. And thanks to my friend Eduardo, who shared this video with me, I am clear as to just how self-sabotaging and dangerous it is to use an inferior faculty, that of mechanical mind, to interpret divine inspiration and to elaborate on intuition, to augment, right? And elaborate. And, oh yes, we need to flesh out that intuition. We have to flesh out that inspiration. Make it more complete. Yes, and how do we complete it? We complete it with our desires. How we think, what we think that intuition is leading us to. But the reality is, when you're climbing the staircase in the dark with a flashlight, you see the next step. You see the next step. You don't see the whole staircase. And very rarely is the whole staircase, very rarely in the dark is the whole everything flooded with light and revealed to you all at once. You have faith that if you keep climbing the staircase, eventually you'll reach where you want to go. You have faith that if you take the next step, it will be followed by another and another and another and another. But at any step that you take, no step on a staircase promises you that the next one is the top. That the next step is the end of your journey. That's a promise that we create in our head, going, "Oh my gosh, I hope we reach the top soon," or is it much further? Is it much further? Is it much further? Because the ego wants everything now, and the ego wants everything easily. So this is the problem with intuition. It's not the intuition that's the problem. It's not the still small voice that's the problem. And if your mind pipes up and says, "Oh no, but the intuition could be so much more clear and could paint this whole systematic flow chart showing exactly what it needs to be like, why don't I get that complete picture with clarity? Then we wouldn't have this confusion and this misunderstanding and so on and so forth." Remember, your being is working through this illusion called time. There is no time. There's no future or past. There's only the now. And he has to work within the limits of the law of accidents, and he has to work within the limits and make room and space for your free will to be or not to be. In other words, very often we don't hear the GPS. We miss the GPS, or we hear the GPS and we just decide for whatever reason not to follow it. And then what happens? You're driving along and the GPS says turn left here, but you keep going straight. Immediately, what does the GPS do? Recalculating route. Because now it has to completely change the plan. Why? Because you missed one turn. Or it said for you to turn left, but you turned right. You got to the traffic circle and it said to take the third exit, you took the fourth. And now its responsibility for you is to get you to where you need to be. So it has to recalculate. And it's frantically trying to recalculate while the vehicle is still in motion, going in the wrong direction. It's trying to recalculate and trying to calculate the best possible route, compensating for the fact that you're now going in the wrong direction. Much the same is happening with your innermost when you don't listen to the intuition, or when we don't follow our heart, our gut, or we second guess our intuition, we second guess our gut instinct, because there's another thing that the ego mind does, the mechanical mind does, which is question or second guess the intuition. And that often comes with a whole bunch of rationalizations and reasons why we shouldn't go that way. The GPS says turn left, but you look down that way and say, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look right. That road over there is much nicer. And that over there is going over there. And I know that thing is over there and this is going in that direction. This seems to be going in the wrong direction. And that's a seedy neighborhood. I don't really want to drive down there. I'm going to go this way instead. You know yourself. You've experienced that in your life. I don't mean with the GPS. I mean in your life. You've got a gut feeling. You've got an intuition to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. But then right away, the mind comes in with all the reasons why you should do this other thing instead. Nah, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to do ABC. You want to do XYZ. XYZ is so much nicer. Hey, you know what? Your friend does XYZ too. And he has friends that do X. There's this whole club of people doing XYZ. And you know, these people doing XYZ is very successful at it. There's lots of money in XYZ. In fact, I think they're going to make a new cryptocurrency around XYZ. And you know that your parents have always said that how much they like that person over there doing XYZ, and why can't you be more like them? Like, right? You know yourself. You've heard this in your head countless times, and you've followed the voices in your head instead of the still soft voice. These are the problems with intuition. They're not a problem with the message. It's not the map. It's not the GPS that's broken. It's not the car. It's not a mechanical failure of the car. I got to be careful about that analogy and using that word that way. But anyway, you get what I'm getting. It's driver error. It's an error of interpretation, misinterpretation, misappropriation, and misdirection, because you read one direction the wrong way, right? And that mental emotional dyslexia gets in the way and changes, it makes one word look like another word, and all of a sudden you're going in the opposite direction. And then when it doesn't work out, you're going to blame the directions. But you read the directions wrong. And the mechanical mind, as David Baer proves with his own words, with his own anecdote, with his own experience, demonstrates that a mechanical mind and a mechanical system and a mechanical theory, a rational theory, is incapable of processing intuition correctly, and almost invariably is going to mislead the individual. Like the poor Egyptian Muslim guy who now thinks that he not only belongs wherever he is for forever, but he belongs in that crowd with the wrong crowd. Because his rational mind has exploited the second intuition to override the first intuition. Because now it's just a belief. It's no longer an intuition. Because the mind wants to hijack the intuition and morph it into a belief. But the morph is not the right word. You know what the right word is? Degenerate. Twist. The mind will take a conscious knowing through intuition, through gut feeling, and the mind twists it into a belief. And onto that belief all of a sudden has all kinds of subjective aspects to it. That's what we see in the David Baer story. That's what you saw in my experience of the campaign. And that's what you know and you have seen time and again in your own life to one degree or another, in one way, shape, or form or another, because this is a universal experience. No one can deny that this is an objective truth, what I'm sharing with you now. This is one of the fundamental aspects of the human condition, that the still soft voice, the being, the higher self, in his attempts to communicate us, to get through to us, to inspire and guide, is captured, filtered, and twisted into beliefs by a rational ego mind, by various egos. And first and foremost among them is fear, because fear is the desire to control and the desire for comfort and security. So very often around that intuition gets like me in the campaign and the making money and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, and the success and the validation. And finally my father can see that I've been, successful in the world and blah, blah, blah. And finally my family will see that I'm not crazy. Because most of us who follow our heart and follow the spiritual path, our family, lots of times we end up being the black sheep of the family and so on, right? So there's so many factors that come into play. And so when we receive an intuition that seems to be pointing us in the direction of success, well, then all of the beliefs and the desires around how great would it be to be successful? Oh my goodness. After 20, 30, 40, 50 years of being unsuccessful. Finally. And now all my loved ones would be they too would be so relieved. But it wasn't meant to be. Not that way. Why? Because all of this had to happen the way it did. Why? So that I could be here now sharing all of this with you and dropping these truth bombs on you. From my own experience and from the experience of others, and telling you outright that this is your experience as well. The details are different, but the archetypal truth is the same. It's universal. This is part of the human condition. And I have a video on YouTube called The Hard Truth About Belief that describes metaphysically and psychologically the process because of how beliefs exploit objective truths to become hard-coded into people's minds. And I use the analogy of flat earthers, the flat earth movement, the flat earth belief, and how that's a religious belief for those who believe absolutely that the earth is flat. And that's based on a fundamental objective truth that we cannot deny, neither you nor myself nor themselves. And because they cannot deny this objective fundamental truth at the core, as the nucleus of their belief in the flat earth, ironic, isn't it? That I talk about the core of the belief of flat earth is the core of a belief of a round sphere. The core of that sphere is an absolute truth. That's kind of funny and ironic. But anyway, let's do some chats really quickly. Going all the way back, Justin said, heightened fear. Does that and heightens instinct and timing to seem it slows. The 30 minutes and 5, this heightened fear, you can even fear I can't rock climb if my hands are disabled. And Justin said, I don't fear, I know my hands will hurt. And he also said, it's easy to deal with invalid fear. How about valid fears? What valid fears? What valid fears? Give me a valid fear and I'll show you an invalid fear. Leah, we said something that made poor Leah ball her eyes, start bawling her, crying her eyes out. Okay. Benjamin Ochoa says, those pumpkin candies are the best. They're still around. And Leah says, the sun will still shine for those hearts swallowed by darkness. Indeed, it does. And Benjamin says, I believe we can seek guidance from our Divine Mother to help us achieve our material goals. Yes, but it's not our material goals that matter. This is part of what I'm saying, is that we will be taken care of. Maybe not how we want to be, but how we need to be. So we'll, as long as we stay true to our intuition, as long as we stay true to our higher self, our Divine Mother will take care of us. Maybe not in a lap of luxury, but we'll be taken care of. Just like I don't live in the lap of luxury necessarily, but I can't complain. I live below the poverty line in terms of money, right? And I have for, well over a decade now, but I don't complain because I've had everything I needed. All of my needs have been met. So I would edit this sentiment, Benjamin, with I believe we can seek guidance from our Divine Mother to help us meet our material needs. And I would lose the word belief and say, so long as we seek guidance from our Divine Mother and our innermost being, so long as we seek guidance, or so long as we follow the guidance of our innermost being, our Divine Mother will see to our material needs. Mugabooz says, this is very deep. We all do this to a degree. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And Benjamin says, that is so true. We all have fear, and it has heavily conditioned us all in our thinking and action. Fear is, it's like in Dune, right? Fear is the mind killer, which is why Paul Atreides, his test is to put his hand in the box. And that's the test. It's a test of fear. Can he overcome his fear? Can he control his fear? Benjamin says, but perfect love casteth out fear. In the same way that Jesus casts out the moneylenders from the temple with perfect love. Why is it perfect love? Because perfect love is severity and mercy in balanced measure, applied unconditionally with infinite wisdom. That is perfect love. And so when it's needed, severity applied unconditionally with infinite wisdom can cast out fear. Because that is how Jesus cast out the moneylenders from the temple. And that is how our Divine Mother, who is perfect love, it is how she casts out our demons, our egos, including our fear. Only once we've comprehended them. Only once we've comprehended our fear. We have to face our fear and overcome our fear. Face our fear like Paul Atreides faces his fear in the box. But yes. And Benjamin also says, in J. Krishnamurti's teaching, he said fear and repetition kills our brain. Yeah, well, there you go. He took that right out of Dune. Fear is the mind killer. All right. The key to all of this, then, in the final analysis, following intuition is not easy. No one ever said that the path was easy. As a matter of fact, any minute now, Benjamin is going to be pulling up a quotation from Matthew talking about the easy path to the wide gate. And there's many who take it. But difficult is the way, and narrow is the gate into heaven, and there are few who take it. Understand that phraseology, right? When we talk about the narrow way is congruent to what the Buddha talked about, the middle way, to what Master Samael described as the path of the razor's edge, and to what we've been talking about today as the problems with intuition. Because intuition is a sliver, it's a slice of pure objective knowledge. It's a flash of insight in the dark of night, as the Dalai Lama once described it. And on either side of that, it's all of this gulf, it's this space. And immediately into that space pours all the ideas and the interpretations and the beliefs and the elaborations and you know, because the mind wants to make it a wide boulevard out of that intuition. But we must remember the narrow way, the difficult path through the narrow gate. There we go. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Thank you, Benjamin. But that's what we've been talking about here. This passage from the Bible perfectly describes the problem with intuition. Because intuition almost invariably challenges us to take a way that is difficult through a gate that is narrow. And the mind, the egos, they want the wide and easy boulevard. So they want to take that intuition and stretch it out until their desires are met, until their preferences, what they want to, and they stretch that intuition out and make it as a foundation for their wide boulevard. And the beliefs and the identifications and attachments to the outcomes that the egos and the rational mind paves, that they stretch out that intuition, then they pave over it with the path that they want, the easy road to the wide gate. But because the foundation of it is this intuition that's objectively true, that we cannot deny, boy, those beliefs and concepts and desired outcomes become so compelling. They feel so true because, again, they've been grafted onto and layered over top and woven around this kernel of truth at the center. So that when they don't come true, we feel so shattered and so forsaken. But nobody ever made us that promise. That intuition was never promised to us. The intuition was just turn left, turn right. The intuition was just do this thing, make this video. The intuition never said anything about money or success, never made any promises. No, that was all my doing. That was all that I paved over that intuition with that, right? That's clear. It's the same as the young man in the story who turns to his guru to interpret his intuition for him. And believe it or not, all of this, the campaign, the realization, the depression, the realizations, this video, today's live stream is all leading somewhere. 2025 is just around the corner. It's just a few weeks away. And a whole new direction and a whole new great clarity has come, right? in the last 48 hours even. So, but we'll be talking about that more next week, and as we move into the new year, which will be our 5th season, if you can believe that. 2025 will be moving into the 5th season of Attlas Information Live and the YouTube channel in general. But the YouTube channel has been around longer than that. But the live streams, this is our heading into our 5th season. So Benjamin says, earlier you mentioned that once we gain an insight, the mind tends to generate numerous ideas around it, expanding its scope. I believe that walking the narrow path requires focus, much like an arrow finding its target. It reminds me of Kyudo, the Japanese art of archery, which beautifully embodies this principle. Yes, absolutely. And it's, it's not by accident that they say stay on target, and they call it a bullseye. And it's not by accident that when you look at an archery target, what does it look like? Right? It's a red dot in the middle. That's the bullseye, and it's surrounded by what? By concentric rings. Oh, for Pete's sake. I really wish that Microsoft would respect your choice of browser and search engine, because it doesn't matter how many times I set for my browser to be Chrome. Microsoft always defaults to using Edge, and therefore it's not Google that it's searching with, but Bing. And I'm not familiar with Bing's search engine and how it works, but when I want to search for an image, I rely on Google Image Search, which is far superior to anything else that I've found so far. But they've made Edge look and feel like Chrome, so you can't even tell when you're working quickly. You can't even tell that you're not in Chrome because it's automatically opening up Edge. Anyway. But who am I kidding? Microsoft is never going to respect anybody's anything. So here we have an archery target. So here's an example of what Benjamin is talking about, and how the intuition is the narrow way, right? The narrow gate. It's the bullseye in the middle. And then all of these distractions, right, are around that target. So it's a very good analogy, actually. But my good friend Eduardo Valdez is posing a very intriguing question, very challenging one. But cannot focus manifest as a trick of the mechanical mind? What you're asking is, cannot the faculty of focus and concentration be hijacked by ego, by desire, and used? It's not, in this case, it's not so much a trick of the mechanical mind, because remember, the mechanical mind is just a tool. It's the egos that are using it. So it's either our being who is using our mind, or our egos who are using our mind against us. Because a hammer can be a hammer, or a hammer can be a weapon. And a hammer you can use to hammer in a nail, but if you're not careful, you can poke your eyes out, with the two prongs on the back of the hammer, or you can smash yourself in the forehead as you're using the very hammer that you're using to drive a nail. So just like any tool, it's got pros and cons, because the mechanical mind is a valuable tool when it's being used consciously by our consciousness. Now this question of focus, it's a question of what you are focused on. So this archery target, you could very well put a desire in its center, right? You could put desire for fame and fortune. You could put, how the New Agers and the secretarians, they create their vision board, and they put all the stuff that they want on their vision board, and then they focus and concentrate on their vision board in order to manifest their desires. Well, that's a misuse of focus. And it's because they have this belief, their mechanical mind is telling them, this is what you want, this is how you can get it. You practice manifesting your desires. So yes, absolutely, focus can be used, but you have to understand, you have to know yourself. What are you focusing on, and why are you focusing on it? What are you focusing on? A desire, or are you focusing on fulfilling an intuition, fulfilling a deep longing that you have? Or, and this is where it gets really nuanced, and this is why I mentioned the whole, like when I was working on the campaign and working on the video, I was doing what I was told, and I was focused on receiving and making the best information. But when I wasn't focused on that, believe you me, I was focused on, my mind would go to, oh man, wouldn't it be great if I can finally move out of this basement? We finally will have the resources to do what we want to do. And right, if I was focusing on the outer parts of this ring, of this target. So my focus was drifting. It wasn't losing focus. I wasn't, but my focus was drifting. My focus was being pulled. So Eduardo, in other words, Eduardo is making a very valid point here. But by making that point, we must be careful that we don't say, oh, focus is a bad thing. Why? Because focus can manifest as a trick of the mechanical mind. Like when, for example, Jordan Peterson recently talked about discipline and order versus chaos. How order is preferable to chaos, and how order is leads you to freedom. Chaos. It's like has Jordan Peterson never seen Star Wars? Has he never seen Empire Strikes Back? Does he forget that the Empire is all about order? There's an expression that goes something like, all medicine taken too much, too often, or at the wrong time, or in the wrong way, becomes poison. Equally, all poisons taken in a small enough dose at the right time in the right way for the right reasons, all poisons are medicine. Focus, order, concentration, visualization, harnessing and working with the creative force, the kundalini, the sexual energy, all these are just tools. They're just like that natural substance. Is it a medicine or is it a poison? The mind desperately wants an answer. It's this or that. But the reality, the truth, is that you can't answer that question that way. Here is this plant substance. Whether it's a medicine or a poison is entirely dependent upon how and when and why it is applied, to what degree, how much or how little. That's the determining factor of whether or not that substance is harmful or helpful, medicine or poison. So focus is no different. No different. Visualization, no different. Imagination, no different. Are you using your imagination to clean it like a canvas in meditation? Allowing the images to emerge and to be given to you, to allowing inspiration to fill the blank canvas? Or are you allowing your mind and your egos to run amok like the Looney Tunes cartoon Duck Amuck, which is one of my favorites, by the way. Absolute classic, brilliant in every way, shape, and form, pure genius. And allow the neurobiological degenerative AI of our rational mind to hijack our imagination and fantasize. And we end up with duck amok because our imagination is now running amok in the hands of all of our desires and conditioning and blah, 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 because that's what's in our brain. Our brain is just a neurobiological, neurochemical AI. That's all it is. That's why anything that somebody tries to make and tries to figure out themselves, or tries to, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna, you try to draw something, you're trying to use your brain. It's like you're just prompting AI. And I'm glad that you brought this up, because I'm glad that you got me on this train, because this is something that occurred to me and I forgot to mention it, but I'm going to mention it now. How does that process work? Because we can say that the mind hijacks and the mind does this and the mind does it, but how and why? Well, here's the answer right here. That intuition, think of that intuition as being the prompt. The intuition you receive, make me a video and run a campaign for a 10 for human 3.0. That's the intuition. That's the prompt. Right? We're the AI. We are the AI in the simulation. We receive the prompt. So naturally, what does the AI do? It generates based on the prompt. That's how AI works. You put in a few very key select words, and AI spits out a fever dream based on what it's conditioning, what's its programming, what it's learning, okay? What its algorithms believe. It's not believed. AI can't believe, but what it mathematically, statistically determines is the most appropriate output given the prompt. And this is exactly how the mechanical mind works with the intuition. Only the difference is that the egos also come and they slip their influence in with the prompt. So we get the prompt of intuition, and the egos come and they slip in a, oh yeah, but don't forget the comfort, and don't forget the security, and don't forget the control, and don't forget this outcome we want. And that gets fed into the AI of the mechanical mind. And that's what generates this fever dream that we then become identified and attached with. It's almost a one-to-one exact relationship between AI and prompts and how that works in technology, and how the mechanical mind will hijack intuition and end up creating this fantasy, because it's fantasy, it's a delusion, but it's such a powerful delusion. Why? Because it's based on a prompt that we received from our innermost user. And remember that we are a human machine. Our mind, our body, our emotions, we're just part of this character. So how else are we going to respond, react? Our mind works the way it works because this is kind of like our being, and our being gives us free will. So our being, inspires us to do something, to make a work of art. And what do? We take that and then we say, okay, I'm going to do that. But then what we create is this AI monstrosity. The key, right, is to get the AI degenerative process out of the way altogether and work towards being nothing, being an open conduit, being an empty cup. That's why practices like dance and movement and martial arts and so on, where you allow yourself to be moved, or whatever you're doing, it's coming through you. So it's no longer like sparks of intuition. It's a continuous process of constant inspiration, because you are in spirit. That's why psychological death is so important. And that's why meditation is so important. And that's why self-observation is so important. To get ourselves out of the way of ourself, so that eventually our being wears us like the Iron Man suit, as opposed to Tony Stark being in his office and typing prompts into Jarvis and then expecting Jarvis to go and perform acts of heroism out there in the world, and expecting the AI Jarvis to get it right. That's what so-called AI degenerative art is doing. The artist is not in it. The artist is not involved. The artist is not putting their heart and soul and passion into it, right? They're typing prompts. There's no sacrifice. There's no suffering. But that understanding that process, and it's like you're being trying to do something in the world, and you get these prompts, this intuition to do ABC. You it's a fluidic thing. You want to be able that, like, moment by moment by moment by moment. It's like that GPS, turn left, turn right, go straight, turn that straight. But they're not profound, grandiose visions that you're getting. You don't see the whole map. You get turn left, turn right, what I call breadcrumbs, right? On the breadcrumb trail. Just a breadcrumb, a breadcrumb, a breadcrumb, a breadcrumb. But we have to treat all of those for what they are. Manna from heaven. You can't take it for granted that it's just a breadcrumb. Because I'm looking for the big feast. Where's the big feast? Well, right now in this moment, you just need the breadcrumb. Why? Because if you pick up that breadcrumb, you have to step a few feet forward to pick up that breadcrumb. And if you do that, you'll be just within sight of the next breadcrumb. And then you'll walk towards that breadcrumb and pick up that breadcrumb. And now you're just within sight of the next breadcrumb. Or over 35 years, you throw yourself into this project and passion and dedication, devotion, and you work on it, you work on it, you work on it, you work on it, it fizzles out, it goes nowhere, it gets you into a dead end. And you're down on yourself, and you have a dark night of the soul, and you fall into depression. You're like, oh man, frustrated, this and that and the other thing. I wasted my time, I wasted my energy, blah, 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 blah. But then something's going to show up, and you look up, you point your head up, and now you'll see, wait a minute, there's another breadcrumb over there. And you realize that this whole enterprise that you were engaged in the last who knows how long, that ended up in a dead end, it didn't end up in a dead end. It's just ended up in a T-junction that feels like a dead end. It looks like a dead end, and it makes you stop at a stop sign. And now you're given a choice. And once again, that choice is be or not to be. Follow your intuition, or follow your frustration, your anger, your fed upness, your lack of energy, your lack of motivation. And no, I want my money, and I want my success, and I want my comfort and security, and I want control over my life, and I'm sick and tired of all this crap. Or you follow your intuition, you look up and you see the next breadcrumb, you say, but there's another breadcrumb. Maybe this is the breadcrumb that's going to lead me out of the dark wood. Maybe this is the breadcrumb would finally at last is going to lead me out of hell, and everything's going to change for me. But you can't become identified or attached to that. Because maybe it's true. But maybe it's not. Maybe that hope and belief and desire is just something that you are bringing and imposing on the humble little breadcrumb, on the GPS signal that says, another T-junction, another stop sign, turn left. That's all the intuition you're going to get. That's all the breadcrumb is telling you to do, is follow that breadcrumb. So beware and be aware, right? This is really practical, down to earth, everyday stuff now. And it's life purpose, life meaning stuff. It's how we live our life. Or continue on the treadmill of becoming identified and attached to outcomes based on some breadcrumb that shows up saying, yes, finally, this is it. This is going to be the breakthrough. This is going to be the one. And no, it isn't. So don't become identified and attached to that. If it is, and if it does, hallelujah. But wait until it happens. Wait until after the fact to look back and be grateful and be surprised and let the universe surprise you. Don't get out in front of it and allow your beliefs and your hopes to become desires for an outcome that may be complete fantasy. Like just don't waste yourself on that. And then when it doesn't work out, you'll say, okay, well, obviously that wasn't meant to be, but I'm at another T-junction or I'm at another traffic circle. Okay. I got to keep my eyes open, my ear to the ground, one eye in and one eye out, observing myself, remembering myself. Maybe not right away. Maybe, I have some downtime, take a rest, right? Have a little holiday like I've been having since October. But know that, when the light's red now, so I'm gonna just wait patiently. But soon that light's gonna turn green again, and it's time for me to continue on my way. Which way am I gonna turn? To be or not to be. That's the only choice we ever have, ever, in any given moment, ever, period. That is the sum total of our free will. To be or not to be. To follow our intuition purely and objectively and simply and straightforward, or not follow it. The nuance that I'm describing with the problems with intuition come with the adversary, the egos, and the rational mind saying, oh shit, he's following his intuition again. Quick, jump on that train, hijack that train. If he's going to follow that intuition, we got to exploit it for everything that we can. We have to take advantage of that intuition while we can. So quick, start dogpiling all of the beliefs and desires and outcomes onto that. Quick. Right? And then there you go. And then we're setting ourselves up again. We're setting ourselves up for disappointment. This is the problem with intuition. And then we do this enough times this happens to us, or we followed other people's directions and so on and so forth, and it's not worked out. And then we end up each time going in a downward spiral, digging ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper into all kinds of other stories that we tell ourselves about maybe we're not worthy, or we're not deserving, or this or that, or we're not loved, we're forsaken, we're forgotten, and so on, and all the stuff that I covered at the beginning. Okay. Even Jesus, Mugaboos 22 says, even Jesus, the Messiah, who knew he was going to be killed on the cross, he questioned, Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Well, he said that while he was on the cross. Even he expected a different scenario. No, in the garden, praying in the garden before his crucifixion, he prays and he's showing his moment of humanity, his mortality, in other words, saying, Father, if possible, let this cup pass in front of me, but not my will, but thine be done. Because genuinely, Jesus was also a man. He was a man. And he was not an omnipotent God, fearless event. No one can stare down the barrel of crucifixion and not be overwrought with fear. We cannot, the very idea that Christians have that Jesus was God from the moment he was born in Jerusalem or in Bethlehem, and that he faced his crucifixion without any fear and without any humanity, because he was already a God incarnate. It completely negates the sacrifice he made. Meditate on that. Also meditate on the fact that the death, the crucifixion, the death and resurrection of Christ has no meaning. If he had all the powers and abilities of Christ before the crucifixion, then what is the point of the crucifixion and resurrection? What is the point? What was he cleaning out? What was he cleansing? What was he becoming? If he was already that, does a butterfly turn into a cocoon to become a butterfly again? No. A caterpillar goes into a cocoon, becomes the chrysalis, and then goes through the process of metamorphosis. Benjamin says, yes, Mugaboo, I agree. Only God knows future events. When Jesus Christ was on the cross, he willingly set aside his divine powers, embracing full humanity in that moment. And Mugaboo 22 says, Benjamin Raphael, yes, indeed. However, it is after death and resurrection that Jesus is raised to the right hand of God, fully knowing the human condition. And Benjamin says, I agree with you, Mugaboo 22. Fully liberated from the human condition, but it was because his knowledge of the human condition is why he came to earth in the first place. And it's his knowledge of the human condition which gave him the compassion and the capacity of sacrifice to die for humanity. I have not undergone death and resurrection, and yet I am here every Sunday speaking to you all about the human condition. We just spent, 3.5 hours talking about the human condition as it relates to the problems of intuition and the human machine's inability or tendency to augment and elaborate and exploit and misappropriate intuition and turn it into something that it is not, a fever dream of beliefs and concepts and desires and outcomes, which it then laments over and cries itself to sleep and makes itself into a victim because the intuition led nowhere and didn't produce the outcomes that the intuition never promised in the first place. My whole purpose for being right now and for the last 10 years has been about exploring and revealing and discussing and sharing these key elements and landmines, pressure points related to the human condition to help you in your self-observation and self-knowledge, to learn where the traps are, where the pitfalls are on that difficult path through the narrow gate. I'm not a resurrected master. Not yet. I might be on the path of the Bodhisattva, but I'm, much like all of you, I'm still in hell. I had a seizure just the other day in a grocery store. I wasn't alone. My father's caregiver was me. I went to the grocery store to help her do shopping because we, like I said, we had Christmas dinner with family yesterday. So we had a lot of preparation to do. So I went and, of course, did my part and helped with the shopping and helped with the preparation and the cooking and the cleaning and everything else. But yeah, I had a seizure in the middle of the grocery store. One can know a great deal about the human condition precisely because one is spending their time in hell. And precisely because one is immersed in that very condition, in the human condition. Like the Egyptian fellow who had to go to the party of movers and shakers to know that that's a condition where he doesn't belong. And to know that he had to go there to find that out for himself and see it and experience it for himself so that he could receive that intuition. Okay, you know what? I don't belong here. Look around the world that you're in, the way the world is going. Or maybe you've always felt that way your whole life. I don't belong here. It's like I don't belong here. I've certainly felt that way. And everybody who walks the path of the Bodhisattva feels that way because there's so much suffering involved in the path of the Bodhisattva. It's a life of suffering and sacrifice for the very people who reject us at every turn. But that's the point. That's the whole point. To know ourselves and know them and know their suffering. There's only one way to know their suffering. We have to experience it. And in many times we have to experience that suffering that's even deeper and more complex and more challenging. Why? Because when you play a game, there's no point in playing a game that's so easy that there's no challenge. Because how else? It's like there's no point in lifting a weight that doesn't exhaust the muscle. Right? Muscular exhaustion is necessary for hypertrophy, for growth. We have to be pushed to our limits and we have to be stretched to our limits in order to break through to the next level. There's no other way. This is the alm of life. This is a universal fundamental, is the meta paradigm of all paradigms. There is no way to circumvent this. You can't avoid it. You can't get around it, nor should you want to. There is no easy path. The easy path to the wide gate doesn't lead to heaven. Leah says, I felt that way since before I can remember. Oh, you felt that way about not belonging. Yes, of course. I understand 100%. 100%. Because you're in hell. And because you've come here to make a difference, to help others who are in hell. Others who don't want to be helped and don't want your help, by and large. That's why there's so few of you watching these live streams. And that's why I don't worry about being monetized. I don't worry about, selling books, not anymore. I don't worry about being a bestseller. I don't worry about having my name up in lights. I don't worry about having tons of followers. That's not what I'm here to do. And we'll talk more about this next week and in the coming weeks and into the new year in more detail. But we are here, the ones who are not wanted, not welcomed, who are different. We don't belong. We're the young man. We're the young Egyptian Muslim in the at the party with the movers and shakers. And we said we don't belong here, but God put us here for a reason. Right? We don't belong in hell, but we're here in hell. So what can we do that is selfless? And how can we serve the essence of selflessness that is within us? How can we best follow the still small voice of selflessness? Let's get the self out of the way. Let's get the false self out of the way. To die before we die, so that when we die, we do not die. Mugabu says, yes, but after each death and resurrection, physical or spiritual, we learn more about ourselves and others and ascend higher. Yes, that's true. That's true. There's no question of that. There's no question of that. But That's not the point of death and resurrection. The point of death and resurrection is to release ourselves of all identification and attachments to this self that is here, that we're identified and attached to, as we have come to experience, to gain experiential knowledge, which we then can contribute to the whole. The knowledge that we gain through death and resurrection is the knowledge of the whole, but the knowledge that we contributed, we have to come to know it before our death and resurrection. That's something that you won't understand intellectually, but if you meditate on it, you will. And and what you meditate upon is your own death. And remember, death is the great teacher. Death can teach us everything. But the human condition, death is a part of the human condition. And so, yes, what we can, by meditating upon death, and by contemplating and meditating upon death, we can learn a great deal about the human condition even before we die. And then there's all the psychological death that you're also referring to as well. That's a different kind of death. So rest assured, even Jesus, who spent his 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, which is a euphemism for the 40 years that he spent in preparation for his mission, he died psychologically many times, like many of us have experienced on our journey, the psychological deaths and rebirths along the way, because that's the way the Alm of Life works. All right. We're fast approaching on the 4-hour mark. So obviously, I want to thank all of you for being here today and following your intuition and participating with what I hope was a very valuable session today. Of course, if you have any more comments or questions, I'll give you a moment to type them. And as I mentioned last week, we're coming up on Christmas, but today, if I'm not mistaken, today is episode 48 or 49. I lost count. But I think we have two more. We have today and one more, or two. We have either one or two more sessions for 2024. I don't know if it's worthwhile doing something for New Year's or whatever. We'll see how that rolls. I really haven't given it any thought, to be honest with you. It's just occurring to me now. Leah says, blessings all. Thank you always, Atlas. You're very welcome, Leah. Thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you. So we only have, a couple more weekends, I guess, before the new year. So I will keep you posted on the scheduling. I haven't double checked what day Christmas falls on. According to my calendar, it falls in the middle of the week, and New Year's likewise falls in the middle of the week. So, so I see no reason why we can't have two more sessions before the year is over, but we'll see how it goes. Benjamin says, thank you so much for today's inspiring live stream, sir. I pray for your continued good health and abundant divine guidance. Thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate that. And well, we'll have more to say about that next week. Let's just say that. All right, everyone. I want to thank you again for spending this time. And Mugaboo says, thank you, Attlas, and everyone for your contribution. Thanks, Mugaboo, as always, for being here. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy to hear the still soft voice. And after today, and reflecting on your own life, hopefully it's put into perspective that hearing the still soft voice it's only the beginning. And even one such as myself, who is here, dedicating his life to all this, and someone such as myself, as recently as October, November, fell victim to this sinister, sly, insidious, but subtle and clever trick of ego. Just like driving, remember, it's not the car's fault. It's driver error that causes accidents most of the time. So the next time you're tempted to be frustrated or disappointed at intuition, remember today's live stream and all that we've talked about. Remember that, you get up out of your car after an accident, the first thing you do is start blaming the car. When you were the one who ran the red light and got T-boned. It's a hard lesson. It's a bitter pill to swallow. But the problems with intuition are problems with reception, interpretation, and application. It's not a problem with the intuition. Thank you all for being with us, for being here together, and I hope to see you all again soon. And until then, I want to wish you all a safe and happy and pleasant week. And I hope your preparation for the holidays and everything is going well. And until next week, I wish you all inferential peace. Take care.